True professional.
Slick.
All mobile phones off, please.
All mobile phones,
mobile phones
pages,
off.
bleeping watches. Everything else right.
Yeah,
We need a camera operator now.
He just said
He's
leave
going to
it.
turn his
Left it running.
Already?
No. We're
Ladies
sure.
and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Davros, Terry Molloy.
There's a battle.
yes.
Hello, Terry. Looks like you brought nice weather with you today.
Yeah, yes.
Not
Sort
actually
of,
raining.
yeah, it's not raining yet, but yeah, left of it, most of it down on the south coast.
Oh, I appreciate you leaving.
Yeah, I know.
Very impressive. Thank you very much.
You came up by boat, did you, today?
Basin's a bit of a lake.
What I'd like to do, Terry, is obviously talk about your career and what you're up to, past, present and future. So first of all, going to the past. Did you always have aspirations to become an actor?
No, I actually wanted to be a vet. Yeah, yes, I started off. Well, I wanted to be a pilot in the RAF first of all, but then when they discovered that when I was about 11, my father was in the RAF, and we went out to we were in Aden, and we came back, and I've been away from I went into a little primary school before I went on to secondary school. And they had one of these health checks where they come around and look down your underpants and jelly to cough and things like that, And they stuck me in front of this thing and said, read everything below the red line. And I came out with the classic, what red line?
Oh dear.
And they said, well, read what you can. And I went, H, don't know. And they freaked, because I just thought the teachers had bad handwriting, So my eyes were starting to go when I was about 10. And when they checked me, they sussed that I was actually grey-green colourblind, so in terms of the RAF or anything like that, I was out because you just couldn't, you needed that sort of facility. So that was out, and then I said, well, I'll be a vet, great, and quite fancied that. And my uncle was a vet, and I used to go up and help him out in the summer. But then when I took me GCEs, I sort of took me 3 goes to get maths, and I came out with everything apart from a science subject, So it was becoming fairly obvious that perhaps science wasn't my bent. So I then went up to Liverpool. I enjoyed doing drama, and I loved it. And I know my mum, who was she'd been on the halls as a dancer for years, from being a kid, until she married my dad. She thought that I ought to go to drama school, but my father was totally against it. He wasn't going to get into some sort of poncy profession like that, so do something, proper. So I went up to Liverpool, studied music and drama, and basically played in a soul band for 3 years, and I did little studying, and then there was, studying wasn't in it, it was, Liverpool in the 60s, hey, it was time for studying, too much time to enjoy yourself, so I spent 3 years playing this whole band, and I very nearly became a muso, because we had a really good band, a 10-piece soul band. We used to frontline all the big groups that came through, so we would pick up somebody like The Herd or Manfred Mann or something, pick them up in Northwich and see them through Liverpool, up through Manchester, up to the Lake District, and then wave them farewell. So we'd be like the warm-up band for all the big tours that came through, and so we were working all the hours that God sent on that, and we just had a gas. It was a blast for us. We enjoyed it. We didn't take any money out of it. We put all the money that the group got back into the group. So we had phenomenal equipment. The group bought me a brand new Selma Mark 610, and we had phenomenal long wheelbase Ford Transit, which all the other groups are really envious. But excuse me, because we never actually took any money out. But then it got to the point where I was just about to leave Liverpool, and somebody offered us a record deal and a couple of months in Italy, working in this place in Italy. And it suddenly all started to fall apart, because as soon as money became involved, and everyone started saying, well, what's my cut, what's my cut, the whole atmosphere of the band went. We were just all a bit loopy, we enjoyed ourselves. But as soon as it suddenly started to get serious, and about, well, okay, this is, and I thought, no, I don't want that, and I thought, well, no, I'd quite like to be a session muso, but then, being a lazy swine, I thought, well, I'd have to really work really hard to be as good a musician as I'd want to be. And acting came terribly naturally. And I thought, oh, well, I'll have a crack at acting with slightly more security in that than in the music business, you know. So that's how I sort of came into acting. I started working in children's theatre.
So what instruments do you actually play then?
I play sax, clarinet. Clarinet was the instrument I learned at school, and clarinet, saxophone, banjo, ukulele, tenor horn, penny whistles, a lot of things that you blow, really. I mean, I picked up more as I've gone along, you know, working in theatre. When I need something, then I would sort of have a crack at it and adapt what I could already do with the other instruments, you know. So. But the trouble with it is, though, I mean, if you're doing something like that and you're working in theatre, that you start to become known as an actor who can play music. And so you stop being thought of as an actor, you be thought of as a muso, sorry about this, who can do a bit of acting. So I suddenly found I was getting loads of parts where they wanted somebody who could play the trumpet to walk across stage, and they give you a few lines as well. Sorry, can I get some water?
I think someone's just...
Oh, great. So I stopped telling anyone I could play any instruments, because it just got... it became ridiculous, because... oh, thank you very much. It's the dreaded bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people would just literally hire you because you could play music, and that wasn't what I was there for, you know. So I just stopped telling people, unless it was a very specific play I wanted to do, which involved a lot of music and acting as well. Like we did a play called All Together Now, which was, which in fact we did at Leicester. We opened it in Leicester, at the theatre in Leicester. Robin Midgley directed it, and it was set around a brass band, and all the parts, there were 16 people on stage, and all the characters had to play really well, because the whole kick of the piece, it was before all the brass band things started to come in, like Shillingbury Blurs and Brass Dots. It revolved around a sort of fairly tatty, you know, Leicester brass band who just played for the crack, and they didn't compete or anything. And then this bandmaster comes in from up north, who was into competitions, and tries to whip them into shape. And as a result, he destroys the band, because that's not what they were there for, you know. Oh dear, sorry about this. That's better. But the kick about it was that the audience heard us playing really bad versions of Abide With Me and Jingle Bells and things. And well, you know, that's all actors are up to, really. But at the very end, they play a third section test piece together for the first time. You've had all this sort of tatty sort of playing around, and suddenly he says, right, we're going to play for the first time. And he goes, right, bump, and you get this bam, 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 and everyone goes, wow, they can play. So, I mean, that was the theatricality of it, that actually you got 16 actors who could really play well. I mean, in fact, we had to pull in, I think we had 3 characters from one of Leicester's championship bands, youngsters who could play really well to pad it up. There were a couple of very young characters who had to play instruments and didn't have very big parts, so we used, you know, really good players to sort of fill up the sound of those of us who were, you know, competent but, you know, weren't up to the full standard. But it worked really well. So that's a specific, you know, place where I say yes, I do play in order to do that piece. But 9 times out of 10, I'd say no, I don't play anything, you know, unless it came up, you know, when we were actually rehearsing.
Do you still play now? Or
Very little, no. I play penny whistle a lot, you know. I like fiddling around on the old penny whistle because that's dead easy. And the pub opposite where I live, you know, where they have regular, you know, band evenings every couple of weeks, as this guy comes in, Lee Vasey, and plays in the pub, and anybody who's there who wants to join in can join in, either singing or playing. So sometimes if I'm around and I go over, I'll take me whistles away, and you know, we'll play a few numbers, you know, whatever it might be, you know. But The sax I keep on meaning to get out and get it back,
Get back to,
going
yeah.
to. Yeah.
I know you've done an awful lot of radio shows
Yeah.
in the past as well. Numerous, I think is the word for it, really.
Yeah, it must be over 500 now.
It must be, yeah. Obviously, besides the Archers, which ones are your favourites, do you think you've done?
The one that was that I liked most of all actually was the one that I won the what is now the Sony Award for. It was then the Pi Radio Award. I was terrible. I'm a radio actor. I'm coughing and hacking all over. And that was a thing called Risky City by Ron Hutchinson, and that all took part in this guy's head after he's had his head kicked in a car park in Coventry, and he's lying there deciding whether to switch himself off. Having said that, it was a very funny play. It was virtually a monologue with him dragging people into his ears to cross-examine them as to why he was there. You know, his headmaster, the guys who did him in, you know, his parents, the guy who built the car parks in Coventry, all of that. And that was really good because it actually stretched the bounds of radio. It really allowed people to use their imaginations. It wasn't just a bog standard play. And it was actually recorded in binaural stereo, which was something they were playing around at in those days, which, I mean, if you had the equipment, you had to sort of sit in one particular spot in the room and it all happened around you. You get very much the same effect by listening to it on cans. The central voice would be there, and then you could actually fire whispers specifically into one ear or the other ear, or up here or down there. It was very easy for the technicians to place exactly where the sound came in.
Like early surround sound sort of thing.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and it was a really good play. Because it was a mixture of poetry and prose. You know, going against the bleep of his heart monitor. You know, before he decides to turn himself off, and then going off into these rambles about Coventry and the sort of history of Coventry and how Hitler's brother came over, and that's why they bombed Coventry, because he thought it was London. You know, he came over to suss it out before they actually did the bombing. You know, and he got mistaken when he got off the train in London, and the station announcer had a very bad head cold like me, so he thought he was in London. So that's why they bombed Coventry. I mean, it's awful. Silly, you know, slightly surreal things like that, but yeah, that was good. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and there are all sorts of little things that you do that have, you know, different resonances. I did a thing, played Pablo Picasso in a production called Guernica, which was actually about the painting of the picture Guernica, which won the gold medal in New York for the New York Radio Festival. And that was great because I actually had to paint Guernica in the studio. Because it was all to do with his life and his relationship with his mistress and what was going on in his mind when he painted that picture. So all that was coming out. We actually had to physically paint it in the studio. You know? So I was selling the paintings afterwards to the crew and everything, signing them Picasso. You know? No, I mean, the great thing about radio is you can be anyone. You can be of any age. It doesn't really matter what you look like. You're not restricted by that as you are with television or theatre. You can, you know, I can still play a 15-year-old punk or an 85-year-old West Indian on radio, because it doesn't really matter what I look like. It's all down to creating the character with the voice and you know, relating to the audience, and that's I love it for that.
I was going to ask you, do you prefer actually being on stage, or do you prefer the radio work with the voice?
They're different disciplines and they give you different rewards. The stage, I think any actor will say that stage is great because it charges up your batteries. I mean, it's that relationship with an audience, which you can't get in the studio. But that two-way relationship with an audience when you're on stage, it's almost like charging up your artistic batteries, working with an audience.
Don't you find it daunting though, really? Big audience?
No, I've never had sort of major stage fright. Some people do. I mean, yeah, you might get a little nervous about something because just being aware that what's going to happen is going to happen, certainly if you don't know the play or it's a new play or something. But no, I enjoy building a relationship with an audience. I mean, we've just started doing this review tour called Come Rain Come Shine, which is using actors' voices, actors who are in the Archers, but it's not an Archers thing. It's a light review of poetry and prose and song and sketches to do with the seasons, you know, and that was good actually, because that's the first time I've been on stage for about 6 years, and you know, getting that feedback from an audience and getting back into the timing of things so that you get the laughs at the right moment. That's invaluable, because you can take that with you into a studio and use that if you've got a piece that is a comedy piece, for instance, for radio. I mean, I'll never forget many years ago, I was writing a kids' play for a summer thing, which we called The Legend of Tangalali, which was effectively Tarzan meets Groucho Marx. So
in the jungle.
In the jungle, yeah, absolutely. Groucho Marx is you know, Archie Hollingtree off exploring and meets up with Tarzan, and go through all these adventures that the kids help him with. Well, I researched a lot of things by listening and watching the Marx Brothers things. Well, it was easier to dump them down onto tape and listen to them for bits of dialogue, and I found it fascinating when I got them down on tape and listened to them, how slow their interchanges are. And you listen to people's perception of the Marx Brothers, it's all terribly quick fire.
Yeah, very wacky, yeah.
But actually, when you listen to it on tape, I mean, for instance, the the sequence with Chico and Groucho at the races when he's trying to flog him this racing guide, you know. So you know, hey boss, you got a breeder's guide? No, but I'm going to get one, aren't I? And there's these great gaps. You think, what the heck, you know, why? But then when you watch it, you realise those are the gaps that you're laughing at. So and they always did their things on stage first before they put them on film. So they'd work out exactly where the laughs were, and then when they transferred the film, they would leave the gaps for the laughs, because they knew people would be laughing then. So you still get the effect that it's quick fire, but you're laughing and you don't miss anything in it, you know. So
it's good to see expressions and
yeah.
facial, yeah.
And it's good to be able to sort of take some of that theatre experience into another medium, because it is a very different medium.
So you prefer radio as a radio then?
I enjoy radio most. Yeah, I think it's the one where the actor's got the most control over what the final output is. You're not sidetracked by focus, by costume, by lighting, by how they choose to edit a scene. It is you creating a character, creating an atmosphere with your voice, and offering that to the audience, or drawing the audience into the place where you live, which you have to do totally with sound, with your voice, and that is a very specific skill, and it's also very fast as well. I mean, film and television can be inordinately boring, as you probably know. I mean, you spend hours and hours and hours sitting on your bum, doing nothing for 5 minutes of frenzied activity. Then if it's right for the cameras, then it's right, and you don't get another bite at it. But within radio, you sometimes have a chance to say, well, I could just do that again, and they have the time. You work fairly fast, but it's much easier to set up the thing to do it again than it is in a film situation or a telly situation. And everyone's such great fun to work with.
When did you realise you actually had this talent for being able to change your voice?
When I was about 9 or 10, I think, when we lived out in Aden. My mum worked for the Aden Forces Broadcasting Corporation. She was sort of like the female presenter for that, and used to do the Forces and Family Favourites links with London, and they did all that. And she did Children's Hour and a couple of special request programmes. Well, every week or every month they would have sent out from London the Goon shows, which were in those days were on transcription discs, which were massive, 18, 20-inch discs set on these massive turntables, and they play them. Well, in Aden in those days, the only place in Aden that actually had air conditioning was the radio studio itself. That was the only place in the whole of Aden, I think, apart from the governor's residence. So the record store didn't. And you're talking about temperatures of 120, 130 in the shade. And you've got wax discs in there, very old vinyl, and they would warp. So they used to solve this by having great sheets of glass, and when they were going to do a record, they would take the record out of the record library on the sheet of glass, hold it in the sun for about 20 seconds, slap another sheet on top of it, and the record would go flat. They'd run it into the studio, slam it on the turntable, play it. By the time it got to the end of the record, it was starting to curve again, and then get it back into the record library. Well, I mean, we got all these transcription discs of the Goon shows, so I could go in there and I could listen to the Goon shows, and I just loved the Goon shows. And so I used to memorise the Goon shows, and then just replay them, you know, myself. You know, doing all the voices, doing all the, you know, oh, no more curried eggs for me. Oh, quickness, the screens, oh, you know, and all that, and Blue Bottle and all. And I just loved it, and I found I could do it. And then when I came back from there, my mother, and in fact I was born up in Tyneside, but moved away very quickly because my father was in the RAF. But I had to go and stay in Tyneside for about 6 months with my family, while my parents got sorted out with a new station and everything down south. And when they came to pick me up, they were horrified because they came up and there was this little Geordie lad saying, yeah, you're right, Mum. Glad to see you then. Why? How are we going then? You know, they said, what's happened to your voice? What's wrong with my voice? Why, man? I'm alright. What's wrong with yours? You know, and it's just, I think it's something to do with music as well. People who are good at accents are actually good at music, because accents, dialects have a particular musicality to them. And if you can hear the music of a dialect or an accent, you've got the accent. Yeah, I mean, okay, there are vowel sounds and things which you can tinker around with, but it's ostensibly the music of the language. People say Tyneside is very, very difficult, and it is if you're not a Geordie. But if you can hear the music of it, then you can go into it, you know. And it's the same with Norfolk. People say Norfolk's very different, you know. But I've lived in Norfolk now for about a year, you know, and you start to hear the music of Norfolk and how it actually goes up at the end, you know. And they finish off these, you know, and talk like that, boy, you know. That's no load of squid, that is, you know. And you hear the music of the accent. And the same with any. I mean, when I was at Liverpool, you know, I was living in Bournemouth, you know, and I go down to Bournemouth and I was saying, oh, you're a bloody Scouser. You know, go back up to Liverpool and say, oh, you're a Ponzi Southerner. You know, say, hey, what's happened here? Where you go? You know, where you been then? You know, I've been down south. You know, you go back down. Hey, you're right, lads. You know, hey, how's it going? You know, hey, Scouser. You know, you just couldn't help it. I mean, the terrible thing was that sometimes you start to pick up people's accents when you're talking to them. You know, meet somebody who's Scottish, and after a while you say, oh, is that so? Oh, I don't believe it. Hey, that's fantastic. You go on, tell me more. You know, and are you taking the piss? No, no, I'm not. No, are you taking the piss of me or what? You know, you start to slide into it, you know, very easily.
Obviously, the Archers. We've got to talk about the Archers.
Oh, obviously.
There'll be an interview about the Archers.
Yeah.
How did you get the part of Mike Tucker in the Archers?
I was just rung up. I'd done a couple of plays in Birmingham for Tony Cornish, who was the then senior radio producer there, and I got a call from the Archer's office saying that Tony had recommended me for to go in and see them, and so I went in and they greeted me and they gave me this script and said, this is the character, and have a look through it and come in and we'll record a scene, you know, and just see how it goes. So I went in and I was met by Edgar Harrison, who played Dan Archer. And we did this scene. I mean, I wasn't in deep awe because I knew of the Archers. I wasn't a great listener to the Archers. I knew it had been around because my parents had listened to it occasionally, you know. I obviously knew about Dan and Malt from people like that. And so I did this scene, and they kept on saying, well, can you do it just a bit slower or a bit lower or whatever, you know. What I didn't know was that, in fact, they'd already cast the character with another actor who had done one episode and then had to go off somewhere else, and so they knew they couldn't use him again. So what they were doing was having me record the scene which he'd already recorded. and they were playing them back to back to match them,
Oh,
to make sure that the voice match was the same. They came out at the end and said, yeah, well, that's fine. Can you start tomorrow? Your fee will be 9 guineas.
Guineas.
Guineas. We got paid in guineas. This was 1973, and we were still paid in guineas. You know, we were paid in guineas. Unbelievable. Nine guineas and four and a half guineas for a repeat. Yeah. It hasn't gone up since then.
They're still paying guineas now.
Mm. Which of course you can't spend. So yeah, that was it. And that tends to be sort of like the story of my life in lots of ways. That I remember I worked with a director, Billy Pride, and we talked about something like that at one time. He said, your trouble, Terry, is that you're actually too versatile. He said, you're the last person I think of when I'm casting. I said, oh, yeah. He said, mind you, you're the first person I think of when I'm in trouble, if somebody drops out. And when you look at it, yeah, Mike Tucker I took over. Davros I took over. You know, I spent a lot of time taking over things that people had started and developing them further. Because I've always had the ability, the versatility, whatever it may be, to do that, to lock into something that, you know, has either been created and take it further, and, you know, sometimes create my own things as well, you know, but I don't, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I enjoy it, you know, because you a great range of things that you can then do.
Obviously, another thing you're well known for, of course, is the Beatles About, of course.
Oh yeah, yeah, yes.
The nasty council official.
Friendly man from the council.
Oh, sorry,
always
sorry,
friendly.
Of course, the friendly
always
man
friendly.
from the council.
Wondering why they didn't get the letter, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean I did that for about 4 years, and it was interesting because I mean I got that job through Jane Davis, who was one of the casting directors, and Nicky Finch at London Weekend, because I just like about a year before done a film with Jasper Carrot in Spain, where I'd done a lot of sort of ad-lib, very much an ad-lib film.
I was going to say, of course, Beatles About is probably nearly totally ad-lib.
It is totally ad-lib, yeah, we don't have any script. We have a kind of storyline. We have a thread that you can hang on to, you know the story of the scam, but then once you've hooked the puncher on the scam, you can then take it into whatever surreal area you like. You know, you can go into, you know, as far as you want, you know, in any direction.
Depending how far they want to go, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just get notes in from the producer, you know, right, take him down this avenue now, you know, or, you know, we're going to send somebody in who's, you know, a tramp and now wants to, you know, camp out on his front garden, you know, so you're going to back him up, you know, and make sure that the guy paid council tax for him because he's now going to be camping on his land, on his garden, you know. So all that kind of thing. So, you know, so yeah, I mean, so it was very much thinking on your feet, you know, and the good scams, you know, I thoroughly enjoyed. When it was that, I mean, it began to generate eventually into sort of, you know, just covering people in beans, and I thought, you know, I'm sorry, there's no skill in getting somebody to stand on the spot while we empty beans on top of them, you know, and I thought, well, I've had enough of this.
It's not subtle enough, is it, really?
Well, no, because I mean, there wasn't.
No.
It's not clever, and it's just funny pictures, and it's, you know, it doesn't allow them to fight back. And the great thing about any of the scams is that when we were going into the scam, we did not know what was going to happen. You know, we could have got thumped. You know, it would be possible for the person to turn the scam round on us if they knew what was going on. But obviously we were in sort of fairly major control of him. You know, lots of, you know, things that we could throw in to keep it back on course. Yeah. But you always felt that there was a fairly equal battle going on. And you were dealing with somebody who, you know, had the ability to sort of do something about the situation they were in. Whereas some of those, they were just, you know, people who were, you know, thought they were going to get a job, and so they would do anything you told them, you know. If you said, you know, take all your clothes off and stand here while we cover you in beans, they would, you know. And sorry, there's no skill in that for an actor.
Which one was your favourite one? Most memorable one of those, I think?
There's a couple, really. I mean, the van in the dock was a fairly classic one. That was the guy who was a greeting cards market trader, you know, and he had this van containing 20,000 quid's worth of greeting cards, which was his life, you know.
Yeah.
And he was a great Beatle fan. I mean, he taped every Beatle, you know. I mean, like, you know, Doctor Who fans would tape all the and watch them. You know, there's no way you're going to be caught out by bumping into Tom Baker by accident. You'll know exactly who he is. Well, the same with this. He knew everybody on Beatle. He said, they will never catch me. Never, never, never catch me. Of course, they're the best. Because they're the ones who go hook, line and sinker. Yeah. And he went off with a mate, you know, we were at Canary Wharf, and he parked his van, and as he returned in this boat from having lunch with his mate, there's this crane backing up, which just nudges his van into the dock. And down it goes into 40 feet of water. And he sees his whole life going down. And he was on his knees crying by this dock, you know. And we were just sort of saying, well, you know, it's going to cost you, mate. I mean, get some divers in, you know, try and pull it up, but, you know. And he never saw any of us. All he saw was the situation. You know, and Beadle eventually comes up from the depths, you know, in a diver's suit, you know, and of course he fell about. Of course it wasn't his van, it's a clone, you know, but he's not going to know that, you know. Which is why, I mean, the scams are very, very elaborate and actually used to cost a lot of money.
Very expensive.
I mean, you're talking about sort of 30, 40 grand for a for a setup like that, where you're crushing somebody's car with one of those big wheelies or something. You know, somebody's got a a Cosworth, their pride and joy, you know, Cortina Cosworth or something like that, and you're running over it with a tractor. You know, you've got to clone that car, and it almost costs as much as the original car to clone it. You've got to look exactly, you know, totally.
To be believable.
Yeah.
Must be, yeah.
So there's that one, and then there were other ones which. There were a couple of ones where we could actually get into really surreal situations. The one we used to do at Luton Airport, we did with a scam where couples were going off to fly off to holiday to Tunisia, and I was the man on Thompson's desk, you know, and when they arrived, I said, you know, I'm terribly sorry, you may or may not realise that there has been a change in the fundamentalist regime in Tunisia. They're now not allowing unmarried couples to stay in the same hotel. So as you're not married, we're going to have to put you in this hotel and you'll be in another hotel 60 miles down the coast. They're going, what? I said, well, there is a way around this. You can get married now under a Tunisian civil ceremony, which we can perform here. Then you will have a certificate to take with you and you can stay in the same hotel. Oh, right, so of course they say, yeah, they'll do that. So you have this silly ceremony where they're asked to hold camel dung and chant all sorts of Arabic, which means, you know, my father, you know, likes to piss in buckets or whatever it may be, you know, and wear yashmaks and hum Arabic, and all this stupidity, you know.
And charge them, of course.
And charge them.
Yeah.
And of course they then haven't got any money. So you say, right, okay, well, they've got very little money. You say, well, okay, well, we'll have to sort this out. So you go through their bags and you'll buy their trainers off them for 10 quid and stuff like that. And then you go away and you come back and say, well, it's okay, we sorted it. You can do 2 days community service mopping out the camel stables when you get over there. Is that all right? Oh, yes, 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 you know. And then you hit them with the whammy saying, oh, yes, sorry, we forgot to mention that now you are married. This actually is now recognised in the UK. So if you don't want to stay married, you will have to get a divorce when you get back. And so the guys are going, yeah, too right. And the girls are going, what? I mean, they were set up because one of the partners did know what was going on.
They must do, yeah.
But
that
was fun. But that was, again, one of those where, you know, if you hooked them, you could take them in any direction you like. You could have them dancing jigs around the airport, and they would do it because they were going off on holiday.
Yeah.
And they, you know, they were looking forward to it, and they were going to do what they needed to do. Yeah.
Now, we'd also like to talk about the reason we're here today, of course, Doctor Who.
Yes.
Wouldn't be the same, would it?
Not really.
Davros.
Davros.
How did you get the part of Davros? How did that come about?
It was through Matthew Robinson. I'd just about 6 months before finished a series down at TVS called Radio Phoenix, which was set in a commercial radio station, which was a sort of meant to be a teenager's soap, really. And I played this sort of dork of a DJ, who was a cross between Mike Reed and Keith Chegwin, I think. I mean, it was awful. I mean, he was one of those really terribly embarrassing, you know, you know, smashy and nicey types.
A bit like
you know.
Alexi Sale, really, in the party.
Not quite as many. No, I think Alexi had a bit of bump to him. This guy was a real slime bucket, you know. Mike Barker was, you know, the big brown bro, you know, hi, that's really great, you know. yeah, mate's right, okay, you know. Right, it's all for charity, you know. Total smashy and nicey. And, but of course I used to do lots of silly little voices through it, which we used to build in. So Matthew knew I could do all sorts of stuff. And he rang me up and said, look, I'm doing this Doctor Who, and there's this character called Davros, I don't know if you've seen it. I said, oh gosh, I vaguely remember it, you know. I sort of, my era was Troughton, you know, and I sort of kind of stopped watching around Pertwee, you know, and sort of wasn't really into it that much. I knew about the Daleks. You know. So, well, you know the Daleks? I said, yeah, you know the Daleks. Well, he's the guy who, you know, created the Daleks. I said, oh, fine, okay. He said, well, would you want to come down? He said, the guy who's done this, he's not available. And I thought you might be able to, you know, do it. If you come down and have a look at the tapes and see what you think. So I came down and have a look at the tapes in his flat. And I said, yeah, you know, you tell me an actor is going to say no. But I thought, yeah, I'll be interested, you know. So that was it. I then, you know, went into Resurrection of the Daleks. Yeah. Into that, and so that was my entree into the wonderful world of Doctor Who.
Cue Larry.
More sugar for Larry, please.
And then, of course, she was invited back.
Yes, yeah. To do the next. Well, no, actually, I did a Cyberman first?
Yeah.
No, did I? Yes,
Cyberman.
Attack of the Cyberman first. Yeah, playing Russell, and then back in.
First part only.
Only for the first part. He got killed, and didn't appear in the second half. Although he got killed on the credits.
Yeah.
He never appeared. You know, the next shot of the next scene, because the TARDIS has this self-cleaning system that gets rid of bodies, you know, to avoid having to pay actors another fee because they're actually in the first scene of the next episode. You know,
Lying dead. Sort of.
Lying dead,
Yeah,
yes.
lying
Even
dead.
if you're lying dead, you get paid a fee. So you get the reprieve of the end of the first one, but then next time it cuts back to that shot, the body's gone. Yeah, just
That's all
disappears.
to do with saving paying you.
It's all to do with paying an actor an extra fee.
I see.
Um,
And that's just been released on video. Actually, comes out today, I believe.
Does it?
This weekend it comes
It's
out.
coming out
Yeah.
shortly, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's just coming out now.
Right. Yeah, and that was good fun. I mean, it was I enjoyed that. Colin was a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very laid back and you know.
And the lovely Nicola, of course.
And the lovely Nicola, yes, and Brian Glover, who I'd worked with before in theatre. We'd done a Shakespearean thing called Circle of Glory, sort of kind of Shakespearean Oh What a Lovely War,
Right.
where he played Falstaff and I was doing all sorts of other things. But yeah, so I mean, it was working with him again, and of course Maurice Colburn, yeah, who I'd worked with in the first Dalek one, because he was in that as well. And that was good, playing a real person for a change. And then, you know, not long after that, we went into the next Dalek one.
Yeah, the Revelation and
Yeah.
into Remembrance.
And then into
that was with
Remembrance.
Sylvester and Sophie.
Sylvester, yeah. I mean, that was an odd one because.
You were rather in the background, weren't you?
Yeah.
More with that.
What happened there? Because they got John Leeson to actually do the voice of the battle computer in that, which should have been me. So that you weren't sure whether Davros was the battle computer or not. But there was a problem in that I was already contracted to do a series for Central, a thing called Tales of Sherwood with Pete Postlethwaite. And when JNT rang me up and said that we want to do another Dalek one, I said, well, the dates clash, but not badly. And we worked it out, and the studio dates were okay, but rehearsal dates were a bit of a mess. So they was trying to get onto the director who was directing the Central thing, and was being very iffy about it, saying, no, I can't possibly release him. So all this was going on, and I thought, oh, flipping heck, you know. So I eventually went to JNT and to the producer of the whatnot. I said, look, you know, we're both rehearsing in London. You know, I'm not needed every day, all day.
Mhm.
You know, can't we work out some sort of schedule where this can happen? You know? So eventually they worked out this schedule whereby I could rehearse with the Beeb in the morning, Central in Carlton in the afternoon. And I couldn't do one of the studios for the Doctor Who, but I could do the next day's studio because I was just finishing location work and all. So effectively I couldn't do the bits where the battle computer was there. So it was just literally the bit in the Texas barbecue. You know,
Texas
that's what I call it, the Texas barbecue. Flip top lid, you know, sort of this sort of head sitting in there, you know, gently frying. So I literally just went in the studio for one day and did all that in one day. And but I'd worked with Sylvester before. Again, we'd done theatre before, and I mean I'd known him from the days when he did Ken Campbell's Roadshow and stuff like that. So that wasn't too bad, you know. But yeah, it was a shame. I'd like to have done the whole schlep. But
would you like to do the role again if it comes available?
oh, I'd love to do it again. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's like, you know, it's like radio acting on telly. You know, 'cause you can really go over the top, and also because it's developing the character. I mean, I took it over. You know, basically copying what Michael Wisher had started.
Yeah.
But beginning obviously to bring something of my own to it. You know, we started to develop it a little further in the second one. In the third one, we didn't really have much chance to develop it any further because you know there wasn't much to develop because it was down to a head. You know, and if it came back again, it'd probably be a large nose or an ear. You know, there seemed to be more and more of him dropping off as the years went by. But I mean, it would have been nice to actually gone back and sort of covered areas like, you know, the trial of Davros. It would have been great. You
That
know.
would have been good actually, wouldn't it?
Yeah. See more of that
Yeah.
area of, you know, the Dalek factions, you know, as they were meant to be the Doctor's major enemy, you know. And actually perhaps have the Doctor standing up for Davros, you know, at some point, you know.
Well, it would be a typical Doctor Who thing to
What?
do that, would it? It would be typical of him to do
It
that.
would. It'd be typical of him to turn up and actually,
Yeah.
stand in
Yeah.
defence of Davros, or you know, offer himself up or something, or other, and defeat them again as usual.
Up to date, let's bring ourselves up to date. What are we doing at the moment, Terry?
At the moment, I'm doing this theatre review called Come Rain, Come Shine, which is it's a sort of light-hearted review of the seasons, really, using actors from it comes under the name Voices from Ambridge. So all the actors are members of the cast of the Archers. That's not to say that we do a lot of Archer stuff. We do very little Archer stuff in it, but it's a very light-hearted review, which we've just started to do, and they're developing it, and in the spring of next year, I think they've already got about 50 or 60 dates planned,
I was going to say what dates.
all over the country. Tend to be one-nighters, but a couple of days in places, doing that around the country, which is nice, because it's sort of theatre stuff that I can get back into again. And immediately I'm looking forward to going off to the Mediterranean, having a nice cruise with the Archers. It's a swine, somebody's got to do it though, you know. Unfortunately they twisted my arm, and but this is part of Archers Addicts. This is the company that we set up alongside the Archers. I mean, it's not a BBC company, it's run by the cast, and we set up the events. We do a lot of partnership stuff with people like P&O, Orient Express and stuff like that, and there are opportunities, you know, where we have conventions, you know, where, you know, the fans can meet the cast, because we're stuck in the studio all the time. You know, it's an added value to certain things that we do.
Are they quite big conventions now?
The last one we did was at the Peacock Theatre last Easter, and I think we had about 600 people there. Yeah.
Big convention.
Yeah. But we have a lot of the cast there. You know, we will have, for a convention, I mean, like the cruise, there are only 10 of us on the, 8 of us on the cruise. For the convention, we tend to have at least half of the cast. And as the cast is now 56, we will tend to have probably about between 20 and 30 members of the cast there. either taking part in quizzes or taking part in specially written episodes, meeting the audience, doing all sorts of bibs and bobs, you know. Because it's important, you know. We just feel it's important, you know. We like to meet the fans who listen to the programme. It's a bit like
Well,
a
keep
jump.
in touch with the audience a bit.
It is, and I mean the Archers is a bit like a sort of big family do.
Well, I've always sort of dipped in and out.
So everybody kind of gets around. It's like a big family reunion. Everyone sits around and sort of says, you know, well, you know, what are we going to do about Kate then? You know, oh, what should we do about poor old Eddie and Clara? You know, and it is like a big, you know, family get together. We don't take it terribly seriously, and I don't think the fans do. You know, it's fairly firmly tongue in cheek, and that's great. I mean, there are one or two obsessives that we get, but we, you know, we steer them into a corner somewhere and get them talking to themselves, and that's fine. And they usually want to talk to themselves anyway, so that's fine. But no, they're fairly gentle. We'll probably be doing another one. We'll definitely be doing one next year because it's the 50th anniversary of the programme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there
January
anything
1st.
special to commemorate it? Plans?
At the moment, we're still trying to work out exactly what the BBC want to do, and they, in their, you know, I mean, come on, what are the BBC going to do? They don't know themselves. You know, you go to meetings and, you know, they'll spend hours, you know, talking about the colour of a mug, but when it comes to saying, well, how about doing something? Oh dear, should we?
Very non-committal.
Well, it is the 50th anniversary of the world's longest running series, you know, on radio, or in fact anything, that you think you ought to be doing something. Oh, should we? You know, I mean, enterprise isn't really in it. So, yeah, but we're pushing at it, and we are certainly going to do a convention. The Archers Office have agreed to put some money towards doing a fairly large convention.
That'd be good, isn't it?
And we're now in negotiations with some partners who do a lot of travel and tour stuff to, you know, perhaps organise that, possibly somewhere like the NIA in Birmingham, you know, which would be big. Because it's also getting somewhere that's going to be, you know, it's not all down in London, you know. I mean, we tend to have done it in Birmingham because that's where the programme comes from, you know. But for how much longer, who knows? As Pebble Mill sinks slowly into the west, disappears in a cloud of brick dust, or certainly may well do in the next few years. We don't know where the programme's going to come from. So it's, yeah.
Wait and see.
It's, well, watch this space, really. You know.
No doubt it'll be 11th hour last minute decision by someone,
As usual.
as it tends to be.
Well, I know, no, they're certainly closing down the television side of Pebble Mill. Just having a news studio and the radio. But, you know, it won't be long before they think, well, we've got this large building for just this. You know, we just need somewhere smaller, you know, and so, I mean, they're already talking about the options for the Archers, where that might go, you know, whether they have a purpose, you know, whether they take over the post office in the centre of Birmingham and turn that into studios, but I mean, that's feasible because it runs right underneath the railway, you know, the railway runs right underneath it, you know, not a good spot to have a recording studio, really, you know. So there's all sorts of rumours and things flying in the air. It's kind of really, you know, wait and see what they finally come up with, you know. I mean, as actors we can work anywhere, you know.
Yeah, it's just
we can record it where they want, you know.
What I'd like to do, Terry, at this time is to open up to the floor and ask anyone if they've got any questions they'd like to put to Terry. Any
You did
questions?
a brief spell on Crossroads, didn't you?
I did one episode on Crossroads.
One episode? I thought it was more than that.
No, just the one.
Oh, this one.
I came in almost at the death of the programme to play Stan Harvey, who had been played for, you know, 12, 15 years by Ted Clayton. I mean, it was a classic Dallas moment, you know, where, you know, this, you know, the long lost, the husband returns and nobody realises he's a different person, you know, to collect the daughter. You know, I mean, good Lord, you know, you're not. It's a different person. He's actually handing the daughter over to go back to Germany with him. You're like, what is going on here? You know, because obviously Ted didn't want to do it again. He'd been out of it for about sort of 4 years, and the last thing he wanted to do would be reassociated with it. So Bill Smethurst asked me to do it. So there was me desperately trying to grow a beard to look like Ted Clayton, and nothing like, you know.
You think they just changed the script, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You think
Yeah.
actually what?
Well, you know, have it so that.
remember him as a big chap
Bit
with
of
a
a
gap in his...
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
Yes, like
yeah,
getting his teeth, you know.
Well, he could have brought the woman over that he was married to pick her up.
Yeah, absolutely,
It's
yeah.
an easier
Just
way
change
out
the
of
script.
that.
Change
Yeah.
the script, have
It's
somebody
just-
else
yeah.
pick her, or a chauffeur comes and picks her up. I
Yeah.
don't know, whatever. But it was interesting. I mean, I wouldn't have missed it. I mean, to have because I mean they shoot it so fast, and there was a scene on, and they pull you onto the floor while they're shooting the scene before you go on, and it was a scene between what's her name, Jill, no, Jane Rossington, and Adam, what's his name, you know, in the sitting room, which starts with her coming in with a tea tray of stuff, you know. And I'm sorry, yes, it was pure Acorn Antiques. Because she stood there, and the floor manager went 3. Oh, and went on. Which and I was in the corner of the studio with a handkerchief in my mouth going, no, we're treating Acorn Antiques. It was pure sort of thing, you know. What? Oh, and you know, and I wouldn't have missed that. I would not have missed that for the world. It's classic. Yeah. So yeah, it was just the one episode.
Any more questions, anyone?
When you're doing something like the Archers, I know obviously you've got your part to record. Do you actually keep up with the events? Do you know sort of the whole script, or do you just sort of do your part and?
Yeah, I mean they do send you the whole script, which you know.
You highlight your face.
You really do want to sit and read through, don't you? No. No, I just literally highlight my scenes, you know. I mean, I did have a big argument with one of the members of the cast who was terribly keen about reading everything, you know. I think it was because I walked into the reader and I hadn't even opened my script packet. I was opening it up, pulling them out and marking them up as we read it. And he said, "You mean you haven't, you know, gone through this and checked?" I said, "No. Should I?" He said, "Well, of course. Professional." And I said, "But, I mean, you know, I said, I've been doing this for, sort of, you know, 20 odd years already, you know, I mean, I do know the character. Yeah, but supposing they change something." I said, "Like what?" I mean, the only thing I could change is killing him, you know, in case I wouldn't be speaking, so, you know. But you've got to know what's happening in the other scenes. I said, "Why?" But you ought to know what's happening in the other. I said, "Why?" Because I'm not in those. How will I know what's happening in other scenes if I'm not there?
Is it relevant?
Is it really relevant? What's relevant to me is what's happening in my scenes. If there's something that may be relevant to something I'm saying that's happening in a scene, they will let me know. You know, and that's, you know, that's the way. That's the way I work. Yeah, I mean, I know there are people who will read a lot of the stuff, you know, and will go through it and want to keep up with the story. But you know, I sometimes like to listen to it and be surprised about what's happening and how my stuff fits in. You know, because it's because actually, I mean, it can sometimes inform you in the wrong way.
Also,
I mean,
you lack the surprise then if you do have something that comes in on you.
Yeah, but also mentally within a scene that you might be doing, if you're relating to a character. I mean, I take for an example Elizabeth's abortion, right? People went on about how the abortion was hammered and hammered and hammered, you know. But actually, if you stood back and looked at that, nobody else in Ambridge knew or knows that she's had an abortion. The only people who knew or know are her immediate family. Now, if I read all those scripts when we were going into the studio, now, okay, I'm playing the character, I'm playing the lines, but I'm not saying it would happen, but there is always a possibility there is some little part of your brain that is informing something you do if you're having a scene with that character. That, because you're looking at them thinking, you have had an abortion. Although you may not even be talking about anything like that, but it might be just an emphasis you put on a word because one of those sensitive moments, you know. You might have a scene where you're going about, oh, it'd be really great to have a kid, wouldn't it, Elizabeth, you know. But if you know she's had an abortion, you're going to inform that with a slightly different colour to your voice. So, I mean, I'll use that as my justification for never bothering to read anything. Okay?
Yeah.
It's logical.
It's logical. I mean, it can, you know, I won't say it would, but there is always that possibility that, you know, obviously when you do that at the stage play, you do need to know what's happening. Although, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'd love to do what they do down at the Globe now, or they have done, is Shakespeare as they used to do it, where you would get your part, and all you got was your cue and your lines. This is how he used to do it. He used to just give the actors their parts with the cue. So your cue will be, at this instant, my lord. So you're on stage and you're waiting for somebody to say, at this instant, my lord, at which point you start speaking. So you don't even know what the story is. You haven't a clue what the story is. So all these actors have got these parts, they don't know what the story is. I mean, obviously, we now know what most of the stories are, but I mean, if it's an unfamiliar play, you know, doing one of the old, you know, the more, you know, esoteric Henrys or Edwards or something like that, then, yeah, interesting for an actor to just take a thing and you know, is it the right cue? Is it the right at this moment, my lord, or is it another one?
Yeah, there's several in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all you get is your in cue and your out cue. So all you know is the person who's speaking on their last few words, what you then say, and who you hand it on to.
It's almost like the original charade thing.
It is a bit, yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously you've got a scene and you get their lines back to you, you know, but then, you know, if you go off, you don't know what's happening the rest of the play, so you come back on again.
You're totally improvising.
Yeah, it's almost like improvising. I think that's great. It's very exciting. Very exciting.
Need one of those O-level companions, really, don't
Yeah. Well, those are useless. Because I think it's, I mean, Shakespeare got it wrong. I mean, I remember we did a version of Measure for Measure at Birmingham Rep studio, in the studio. A 6-handed version of Measure for Measure. You know, just 6 of us playing all of the characters. And the guy, Chris Honer, who directed it, had actually studied. Measure for Measure was one of his theses at university. And he reckoned that it was all wrong. And so what he did was basically not rewrite it, but reallocate the scenes in Measure for Measure, so it made a more logical order. So in fact what he did, he started the play with actually Act 1 Scene 5, then followed it by Act 1 Scene 3, then Act 1 Scene 1, and then moved to Act 2, and because it then made sense to the Duke arriving, you know, the lousy justice in the place, the fact that the Duke decides to go away, hands over whatnot to what's his name, and then it all, you know, then he starts to abuse the power while the Duke watches. Well, we, you know, because I've always been a great believer that, yeah, treat Shakespeare with a fair degree of respect, but don't reverence him. He was a playwright, and he used to chuck things around, and so we cut a lot of it. We cut stuff around and rejigged it. So you've got these poor kids who are doing Measure for Measure forever, and we're doing this before, and they're there with their texts, and they're going rushing backwards and forwards in the book trying to find where we were. You know, all the pages are all the wrong way around. It's hysterical, you know. It's, you can do that with Shakespeare. I mean, it's valid. It's valid.
I agree with what you're saying. I think it's just lucky he was the first. That's what it was. Something had to be the first, and he was the first. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Terry?
Have you been approached by Big Finish or MJTV to do these Doctor Who spin-off CDs?
No.
No.
Why not? Why not? Why not? No, I haven't.
Oh, right.
No.
I'll give him a bell then on Monday. You're up for it?
I'm up for it.
You're
yes.
up for it,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And Davros is up for it.
And Davros is certainly up for it, yes. Yeah. No, the last sort of recording thing I did of anything, and it wasn't even Doctor Who, it was Blake 7. Somebody got me into doing sort of rejigged stories of Blake 7. Some guy at a recording studio in Worcester got me in to play this sort of assassin, not as Davros, as this guy called Kane, and I did that.
I forgot to look at that. I've looked at the audio.
What?
I've got both those plays that they did.
The Mark of Cain.
Oh, right.
The Mark of Cain. I played Cain, the assassin.
That's
Didn't play any with anyone. I mean, it was one of those things where they record all the actors individually and then splice them together. So how it comes out, I do not know. I mean, how it sounds, because there's no bound. You know, he was recording Gareth one day, and bringing what's her name at another day, and then me, I come in and do all my lines, and then they stitch them together. You know. Odd way of working, but I guess it has some interesting experiment. Anyway.
Who's got any more questions for Terry? Coming to them.
The dreaded tin.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
Please, sir, can I go and have a pee? please, please, for a second. Well, I'll take this off because otherwise I'll drag you with me. And I know you wouldn't want that.
Do you know where it is?
I know where it is. I've been.